My name is Claire. I'm 32, and for the last few weeks, I feel like I've been living inside someone else's life. Or maybe I've been living in mine the whole time and just didn't realize how fragile it was until the night my stepfather walked into my room while I was in just my shirt. That night wasn't what you might think. It wasn't scandal or drama ripped from some cheap paperback. It was quieter, stranger. It was the moment everything in me cracked, like someone tapped the glass of my life with just enough force to make the first fracture. And it's haunted me ever since. Before that night, things had been different. My marriage, God, even saying the word feels heavy, used to be my anchor. Mark and I had this rhythm once. We laughed too loud in restaurants, kissed in grocery store aisles when we thought no one was looking. He used to reach for my hand in bed, tangle our fingers together as though I was something precious he needed to hold on to in the dark. But slowly, so slowly I didn't even notice at first, the warmth between us cooled. At first, it was subtle. A kiss that felt rushed, almost perfunctory. Cuddling on the couch that used to lead to whispered promises and long, sleepy mornings, now cut off with him rolling away to check his phone. Even the way he hugged me began to change. His arms around me felt less like a refuge and more like a box I was trapped in. He'd squeeze too hard, as though trying to prove something neither of us believed anymore. I told myself it was normal. That long-term love naturally softened at the edges. That we were busy, tired, distracted. But deep down, I felt it, the hollowing. The way he looked at me but didn't see me anymore. The way I smiled at him but felt like I was performing some version of myself we'd both agreed to keep pretending was real. And then came that night. It was late. The house was quiet except for the rain, the kind that streaks the windows in soft, uneven lines. I'd been sitting on my bed in just one of Mark's old shirts, knees pulled to my chest, scrolling through photos on my phone like maybe one of them would remind me how to feel alive again. That was when the door opened, slow, careful. It wasn't Mark. It was my stepfather, Daniel. He froze when he saw me, the hallway light spilling across the room, slicing through the dark like some uninvited truth. His face, God, I can still see it, held this strange mix of apology and something I couldn't name. Sorry, he murmured, voice rough. Didn't realize you were? I don't even remember what he said next because in that exact moment, with the air thick between us, something inside me shifted. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about Mark. It was about me. Because as I sat there, skin bare under the thin cotton, heart beating too fast, I realized how long it had been since I'd felt truly seen. Not by Daniel. Not by anyone. And that was the moment I knew something had changed. That the girl who once laughed in grocery store aisles was gone, and in her place was someone I didn't quite recognize, someone who was slowly disappearing under the weight of her own life. After that night, everything between Mark and me felt different. Not in the way you'd expect, there was no confrontation, no explosion. Just this low, constant hum beneath everything, like the electricity in the walls when the lights are off. Mark didn't even notice. He came home from work the next evening, kissed me on the forehead instead of the mouth, and disappeared into the shower while I stirred pasta on the stove. That's what we'd become, routine dressed up as marriage. I kept thinking about Daniel. About the way he'd hesitated in the doorway, the apology in his eyes. There was nothing inappropriate about it. He didn't linger. He didn't say anything out of line. But it shook me because it made me realize how lonely I was. And loneliness, when you've been married this long, doesn't feel like empty rooms or silent dinners. It feels like someone lying right next to you, close enough to touch, but miles away all the same. That night, after dinner, Mark sat beside me on the couch. He draped his arm over my shoulders, like he always used to, but it was mechanical, absent. His hand didn't squeeze mine. His eyes stayed on the TV. I leaned into him anyway, craving warmth, craving something I couldn't even name. Long day? I asked softly. He grunted, not looking away from the screen. I pressed my cheek against his shoulder. I miss us, I whispered before I could stop myself. He glanced at me then, finally, but his expression was tired, blank. We're fine, Claire. Just tired, that's all. But I knew better. Because fine doesn't feel like this. Fine doesn't feel like kissing someone and tasting distance instead of desire. Fine doesn't feel like lying in bed at night, you're back to the person you love, pretending sleep so you don't have to talk about what neither of you wants to admit. I started noticing everything after that. The way he only touched me out of habit. The way his compliments stopped coming, replaced with practical questions like, did you pay the electric bill? Or what time's your appointment tomorrow? The silence between us grew louder. And through it all, I kept seeing Daniel's face in the doorway, the rain behind him, the awkwardness of the moment. Not because I wanted him, but because for one raw second, I felt like someone accidentally stumbled onto the version of me I kept buried. The one who used to laugh. The one who used to want things. That was when the guilt started. Not because I'd done anything wrong, I hadn't. But because a tiny, traitorous part of me was beginning to wonder what it would feel like if someone actually looked at me again. Really looked. And once you let that thought in, even just a crack, it changes everything. The breaking point didn't come all at once. It never does. It was slow, like a storm building behind the horizon until one day the sky just tears open. It was a Thursday night. Mark had come home late, smelling like the office, that faint mix of paper, coffee, and exhaustion that clung to him these days. He dropped his bag by the door, muttered something about traffic, and kissed me on the cheek without looking me in the eye. We ate dinner mostly in silence. He scrolled through his phone between bites, nodding absently when I spoke. I told him the washing machine was making that sound again. He nodded. I told him my mom had called. He nodded. By the time we finished, I felt like I was talking to a wall. Afterward, I stood at the sink, rinsing plates under the warm water, and I felt it rising, this knot in my chest, tight and hot, like I couldn't breathe. Mark, I said finally, my voice too sharp, too loud against the clatter of dishes. Do you even see me anymore? He looked up, startled, frowning. What? Do you even see me? I repeated, my hands trembling now. Because I feel like I'm disappearing in front of you and you don't even notice. He stared at me, confused, defensive. Claire, what are you talking about? We're fine. No, we're not. My voice cracked on the word. We're not fine, Mark. You don't touch me like you used to. You don't talk to me like you used to. I feel like we're roommates who happen to share a bed. The words hung there, heavy and raw. He opened his mouth, closed it, rubbed his face with his hand like he was trying to erase the whole conversation. I'm tired, he said finally, quietly. I'm just tired all the time. I turned off the water, gripped the edge of the sink. Do you ever wonder when it stopped? I asked, my voice softer now, shaking. When we stopped being us. Mark didn't answer. And in that silence, I felt it, the full weight of everything I'd been pretending not to feel. The loneliness. The frustration. The ache under my skin that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with wanting to be wanted, to be known. That night, we lay in bed with miles of space between us. I stared at the ceiling while his breathing deepened, steady and distant. I remembered the way Daniel had looked at me that night in the doorway, not with desire, not even curiosity, but with this flicker of awareness. Like he saw me for the briefest second before the door closed again. And I hated myself for thinking about it. But I hated even more the cold, aching emptiness in the bed beside me. That was the moment I knew something inside me had cracked for good. The next morning felt strange. The sunlight cut through the blinds in thin, accusing lines, the kind that made the room look sharper, colder. Mark was already gone for work, like always, leaving behind the smell of coffee and the faint echo of a door shutting. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hair a mess, my heart heavier than it had been in months. Something in me felt raw, scraped clean from the inside out. I couldn't stop replaying the night before, my voice breaking at the sink, Mark's blank eyes staring through me, the way he said I'm tired like it explained everything. Maybe it did. Or maybe it was worse than that. Maybe he was tired of me. I carried that thought like a stone in my chest all morning. When Daniel stopped by to drop off a box my mom had sent, I nearly didn't answer the door. But I did. He stood there, tall and awkward, the same man who had opened that door to my room a few nights ago and unintentionally shattered something inside me. "Morning," he said softly, holding out the box. "Your mom said these are for you." I took it from him, our fingers barely brushing. "Thanks." He hesitated, then studied my face for a moment, his brow creasing like he could see the exhaustion under my skin. "You okay?" he asked finally. And God help me. I wanted to cry. Not because of him. Not because of what happened that night. But because someone had finally asked. Someone had noticed. "I'm fine," I lied, voice small. But his eyes lingered on mine like he didn't believe me. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the box but not really seeing it. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." It wasn't the words that broke me. It was how unsurprising they were. I pressed my hands to my face, tears hot and sudden and completely uninvited. Because the truth was this, I couldn't remember the last time he looked at me like I mattered. The last time he touched me like he wanted to. The last time we laughed until our stomachs hurt or kissed just because we couldn't not kiss. And maybe marriages survive on less. Maybe they limp along on schedules and shared bills and the occasional obligatory date night. But I didn't want to limp through the rest of my life. For the first time in months, maybe years, I admitted that to myself. I didn't want to feel invisible in my own home. I didn't want to lie in bed next to someone and wonder if he even saw me anymore. I didn't know what came next, for me, for Mark, for us. All I knew was that something had to give. Something had to break wide open before it killed me from the inside out. Because I couldn't keep disappearing like this. It was raining again the night everything changed. The kind of rain that makes the streets shine like black glass and fills the air with that damp, heavy smell of earth and asphalt. I sat in the car outside our house for a long time before going in, my hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Mark was home. His car was in the driveway. The house lights glowed warm through the windows. But I felt cold. I didn't know what I was walking into. A marriage? A shell of one? A man who might still love me but had forgotten how to show it? When I finally went inside, Mark was at the kitchen table, hunched over his laptop, the glow of the screen painting his face pale and tired. "Hey," he said without looking up. "Hey," I answered, my voice quiet but steady. I stood there for a long moment, dripping rainwater on the floor, watching him type. Watching his hands move across the keyboard, the same hands that used to trace my spine in the dark, that used to cut my face like I was something breakable and worth holding carefully. "Mark," I said softly. I swallowed hard. "Do you love me?" That made him look up. His brows pulled together, his mouth opened like he wanted to say of course or what kind of question is that. But nothing came out right away. Finally, he said, "Claire, I'm here, aren't I?" It wasn't an answer. And it wasn't enough. Something in me cracked wide open then, the part that had been holding everything together with duct tape and denial. "Being here isn't the same as seeing me," I said, my voice shaking but rising now, filling the kitchen. "It's not the same as touching me because you want to, or talking to me because you can't stand not to. I feel like I'm living with a stranger who used to love me." Mark stared at me, his face tight, unreadable. "I didn't know you felt like this," he said finally. And I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the kind of laugh that keeps you from screaming. "How could you not know?" I'm right here, Mark. I've been disappearing in front of you for months. The rain pounded the roof, the wind rattled the windows, but inside, everything was so quiet it hurt. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if this was the beginning of fixing us, or the beginning of the end. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing in the middle of my own life instead of watching it from a distance. And maybe that was the first step toward something real. The fight, if you could even call it that, didn't end with slammed doors or raised voices. It ended with silence. Mark sat at the table, staring at me like I was someone he hadn't realized he was living with. Like he was seeing me for the first time in months. Maybe years. I stood there in the doorway, arms wrapped around myself, the weight of everything I'd just said pressing down on my chest. I didn't know you felt that way, he said again, quieter this time. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Because maybe that was the problem, we had stopped talking long before the affection faded. We'd stopped checking in with each other, assuming love could run on autopilot while life swallowed us whole. Mark rubbed his face, exhaled like he was trying to empty himself out. I don't know when we drifted like this, he admitted finally. His voice cracked just slightly, and for a moment I saw the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who used to pull me close in the grocery store just because he couldn't keep his hands off me.